All right, this is a pretty cool lesson, and it's going to be even cooler when we start doing JavaScript, where we can start to have the user interact with the page. The reason I say that is what we're going to be learning here is how to make elements of the page display or not display. So basically to hide or show elements of the page, that's one thing. And then also to change how specific elements show up on the page, whether they default to showing up on different lines or whether they default to showing up inline. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But before I do, let me just show you how this plays out when you interact. The ability to hide or show elements of a page, how it shows up when you're doing something like JavaScript. So if I click here on Help and Hints, this is a button, and when I click this, it activates a code that tells the page to show or hide things that have been hidden on the page. When I click Help and Hints, this Close Help and Hints button now shows up. This information that was hidden up till this point now shows up. All of this stuff shows up, and when I click Close Help and Hints, it changes. So basically what the page has all of the instructions in it, and then depending on what button you press, it says show this, don't show this, hide this, don't hide this. And that's all using cascading style sheets. Now the ability to change it is using JavaScript, which we'll be learning next. But I want to show you that in one other place. I'm going to W3 Schools, which is where I've gotten a lot of our instruction for cascading style sheets, and you can see here that there are 3 images, and there are 3 buttons. One that says remove, hide, reset all. Now this is using JavaScript to do basically the same thing that I just said, but look how cool this is. If I click remove, then that box moves away. If I click hide, then that image hides. It doesn't just disappear. The space doesn't get contracted. It's still there, it's just hidden. And if I click reset all, they all go back. And so there are 2 different ways to hide things. One is using the display none item. And if you display none, then the space that is being used by the item disappears along with the item. So right here, display none, everything contracts and fills the space. Whereas if I say visibility hidden right here, then I'm going to hide this image, but you'll see the space is still there. Now again, you're not going to really do this all that much until you have the ability to have the user make some of these decisions. But there are going to be times where you want something to disappear as if it was never here, and there are going to be times where you want the space to be retained. So let's go over here back to our page, and just to show you how it works. So I have H1, it says this is a visible heading, and then H1 class hidden says this is a hidden heading. And so what we want to do first off is just hide it. So we're going to say visibility, and you see I have H1 with a class of hidden, so H1 class of hidden, and we're going to say visibility is hidden. Okay, and what's going to happen here is, see if you remember, visibility is hidden doesn't mean that it doesn't show up at all. The image doesn't show up or the text doesn't show up, but the space is still there. So we should expect there to still be some space. So you say this is a visible heading, but with visibility hidden, the hidden heading does still take up space. If we change this to display none, then the space is going to disappear. It's going to contract. And so you can see here for display none, that does not take up space. Okay, so those are the 2 distinctions we want to do there. The other thing that we want to talk about are the 2 different ways to for images or for text or other things to display. And what that is it either displays as a block or it displays inline. And a block, there are certain things that default to block. So let's say, for instance, certain elements display as blocks naturally. We know that a paragraph element displays as a block, and what that means is that if you have 2 of them next to each other without any additional thing, it's going to show one on one page and one on one line, and then it's going to skip and go to another line. All right. So let's say that I change this and I make that, rather than having it be displayed as a block, which is its default, so I don't have to specify it, let's say that I have this display in line. Watch what happens. So normally these naturally, paragraph skips a line and goes to another paragraph, regardless of whether it's next to each other, right? Now just to show you, even though there's no space here, I should still expect it to skip a line, and it does. But I can change that and specify that I want this to be inline instead. And if I do, watch, even if there is space, remember we know that this doesn't really do it, that these carriage returns here, these line breaks don't do anything unless I code it. But watch. Now it moves them together. You see, it doesn't, because I've changed the way it's being displayed. Rather than being displayed as a block, I've now set a display inline. Well, let's see how that plays out in a more common way. Right, it's here with our list items. So this list item defaults to this, right? To a bullet. But you can see in other places, for instance, this is actually a list item, 2 list items, but rather than having them be stacked on top of each other like bullet, 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 I've changed the display to be inline. So watch, li, list item, display inline. And what that's going to do is it's going to take it from its default, which is to display it, block, 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 block. Now it's going to display it in line. Like this. Navigation link 1, navigation link 2, navigation link 4. Now this is where if you started to put things together and wanted to get creative, look what you could do. You could say background color equals green, and you could even say that when you hover over this, and I'm going to have to do that in a different lesson because I have to go back and review the code, but you could even say that when you hover over this, it changes. So watch though, and let's create a little bit of margin around it, 10 pixels. So this is just a little extra credit. You can see here that now I've created kind of a mini navigation link, and I can roll over it and have it change based on the hover state, which we've talked about in the past. Okay, so this is just something that we want to show here, and the big thing that I want to show you is the ability to create the inline instead of the block. Okay, now you can also say if there's something that naturally shows up in line, let's say you had a bunch of images that naturally showed up in line, you could change those and make those display block as well. All right, great.